Hello, my name is Greg Bouyeris with Let's Go Studio, and I wanted to thank you for taking time to watch today's walkthrough. What you're seeing here is a project I was asked to produce for a recent client, a Boys and Girls Club operating in the San Francisco Bay Area. The project was billed as an asset that introduces a mixed audience of potential, new, and existing supporters to the work and recent history of the organization through dynamic storytelling that is supported by data and unique ways of data presentation. The project became a storytelling framework designed specifically for boys and girls clubs that want to elevate how they communicate impact, strategy, and vision, and to do so in a way that resonates with board members, that resonates with boards, donors, corporate partners, civic leaders, and community stakeholders. What you're looking at now is a fully customizable template that any Boys and Girls Clubs can adapt to clarify their case for support, to align their boards around shared priorities, to inspire corporate and foundation partners, and to anchor capital campaigns or major gift conversations, or simply just to tell their stories better. As such, it's designed to be modular. You can shorten it to a 20-minute civic presentation, expand it for a board retreat, use it as the backbone for a campaign, or let it run in the background of a gala or Youth of the Year event. As I walk through this presentation, I'll explain not just what each section says, but why it's structured the way that it is, and how it builds momentum, and how you can adapt it for your own community. If you're a CEO, development director, board chair, or marketing lead, my hope is that this becomes a tool that strengthens your voice and accelerates your impact. Let's dive in. So this is the opening sequence. You'll see that it has a lot of imagery.
He stood about 5'9" tall, but he was a giant. Billy Thomas. He ran the Boys and Girls Club where I grew up. Now, I know today is different. Young people face problems I never even had to think about. But that's why now, more than ever, we need the Boys and Girls Club. It's a positive place. Thousands of people like Billy Thomas help young people succeed.
So with that opening crawl completed, we're now going to just launch right into several questions about the organization to provide information about who we are and what we do. Beginning with how many kids any individual community member might think that we serve as an agency. For this organization, we started with looking at what the organization was doing pre-pandemic and then how that evolved post-pandemic. And so they wanted a really unique way to capture this data. And so what we said was, before the pandemic, we served 1,000 kids. Now, this is where the dynamic data interpretation becomes tangible. Imagine that number as a strawberry. Doesn't it look delicious? It's really juicy. It's beautiful. I love strawberries. Well, as we made it out of the pandemic, we had grown by 3 times, and our strawberry has now become an apple. Well, that's okay. You've got an apple, and apples are delicious, but we're serving all of these great kids, and now we've grown by an additional 5 times, making our apple a watermelon. So ultimately, what we're saying is that we've grown a lot, and this allows us to tell the story of how the club organically grew over the course of the pre-pandemic stage to post-pandemic reality, now serving over 8,000 kids. So let's talk about that number 8,000 and how we can reinterpret this data in other interesting ways beyond fruit. Well, for this organization, if we took all 8,000 of those kids and laid them down head to toe, it would create a line of children stretching 7 miles. Can anyone on this call actually identify something that is 7 miles long? Probably not. And so we have to find different ways to make that more tangible. So again, displaying in the background, you can see that it guides our audience through which of these things are 7 miles, the length of 4 Golden Gate Bridges, the distance between Palo Alto and Mountain View, or the depth of the Mariana Trench. The answer is all 3. This lets us give practical ways of re-envisioning what that data looks like. Now, anybody in the audience is going to say, my gosh, 8,000 kids, where are they putting them all? Well, so that's where we start talking about the footprint of this organization, which stretches from San Jose to Morgan Hill to Redwood City and in Milpitas, and then finally in Concord. This organization wanted a much more dynamic map to help demonstrate the breadth and scope of its facilities and where it's operating. It operates on a very large footprint in very disparate communities. And so what we did was we took Google Earth and then we're able to plug in unique thumbtacks for each of their locations and then guide that camera to each of the different communities in which they're providing service, from San Jose to Milpitas to Morgan Hill, on to Redwood City, and then finally on to Concord. That takes us to an overview of all of the organization's locations. Okay, so now let's talk about who we serve. Now, this is an interesting way to capture who comes to the club. And so for us, 99% of them come from low-income households. So we said, all right, well, we take those 8,000 kids and condense them down into one village of 100. Here's how that economic disparity would break out in that village. 99 of those kids would all come from low-income households. A portion of a child would come from a moderate income household, and a portion from a high income household. Okay, but what does that mean? All right, so what are these households actually comprised of? Well, for low income households, this is how we defined it, and these are the experiences of those kids. We did the same for moderate income households. This kind of tells the story of that household's journey as well, just in the bottom corner. Now, I should also clarify that each of these slides comes with designer notes, a script, and then data points that back up the different portions that are presented here. In our community, wealth looks like multiple homes and survival looks like multiple jobs. This is where we start to transition toward what is the problem that this organization is trying to solve, right? We're looking at the challenges faced by youth in this community and how those challenges have a direct impact on their outcomes as adults. In short, growing up should not be this hard. And so let's now talk about what this local organization or your local organization as a Boys and Girls Club currently does to help combat opportunity gaps, provide opportunities for kids to be a part of a community and deal with mental health, and then also to overcome some of the stress associated with being part of a low-income household. You'll see now popping up, we have education and career, character and leadership, health and wellness, the 5 core areas that our Boys and Girls Clubs all espouse. Within each of those areas, we have different programs that are now identified, and then demonstrations of what kids do in those programs in the background. Health and wellness, so we do cooking programs, Smart Girls, Passport to Manhood, Smart Moves, Zumba for kids, yoga for kids, mental health supports. In the arts, photography, music, art, all kinds of wonderful things that our kids are doing alongside staff. In sports and recreation, you have, of course, triple play sports, play ball, RBI, fun at bat, all-stars, and junior RBI. Clearly, at this juncture, we can then say that those who need us most have never needed us more. And I think this is where we now can transition to what are the actual outcomes associated by participating in after-school programs like the Boys and Girls Club. As a great example, we've got all of these wonderful national alumni to whom we can point and say, this person found their greatness here. But they also came from circumstances where they did need us most. And so we created 8 different vignettes based on national alumni. The goal being here is that the audience will sit back and they may not recognize who this is at first glance, or maybe they will. And then they'll see this is a person who grew up. I always had the music in me before I knew where to put it. I found my voice at the club. It's where I found my power. Jennifer Lopez. Moving on to national spokesman, we have, again, our pictures of kids. And so you can see that, with national alumni as an example, and even local alumni, we can tell a really dynamic story and connect to real outcomes. As many of you are aware, the University of Michigan did a wonderful study that was proposed by Boys and Girls Clubs of America that equated that if you invest $1 in youth today, it generates over $10 in economic impact. The data sources for this are cited in the notations, the presenter notes for this presentation. It also talks about the importance of staff, right? I mean, I don't care if you have the coolest video game system. It's the person wearing the shirt that actually drives the relationship that builds and compounds to drive a kid toward a better future. And so what do local kid experiences say about us as a community? Well, I think this is where, we can then say when a kid walks into a space and they don't see that it is clean, that it is advanced, and that it is welcoming, well, that tells them in a very tangible way that their community doesn't value them. And so it's contingent on us to ensure that kids always have a space where they don't just feel supported, but they can find a launch pad that propels them to a great future. So at this stage, we have established who we are, the case for support, provided examples of direct outcomes from alumni, and then also provided tangible resources for how investing in the club changes lives, why kids deserve opportunities to walk into spaces that are clearly built for them and function as a launch pad to great futures. Now let's talk about how individual audience members can support your mission. And so for this organization, they asked us to focus on volunteering, giving, and championing. And so now we're going to dive into what each of those are. So for volunteering, you can see now that it just organically comes up and says volunteering means standing alongside youth by sharing time and skills, from recording with kids to supporting events. Moving on to giving, they can give donations. They can, and how does that donation fuel the stability, mentorship, opportunity, and systems needed to scale impact responsibly? And then to champion, and what championing means, using your voice to open doors and influence others to advocate and create additional connections to support youth. And that concludes the presentation before we get into the end credits. So we start where we began with this music in the beginning. We didn't really know who was speaking, right? We hadn't focused or done the reveal. Now we reveal.
It's a positive place where thousands of people like Billy Thomas help young people succeed. Does it work? You did for me.
All right, so that concludes today's walkthrough. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and that it is a tool that you're interested in using. If you'd like to know more, or if you'd like me to build out a similar presentation for your organization, you're welcome to reach out to me at greg@letsgostudio.org. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.